The information provided on this show does not, and is not intended to, constitute legal advice. Instead, all information on this show is for general informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for legal advice, and we recommend viewers consult an attorney for specific legal matters.
Welcome to Condo Craze and HOAs here on our YouTube channel. Karen Curtis with attorney Eric Glazer.
Good morning.
Good morning. And we would just like to say a big shout out to our sponsors who make it possible for our fantastic show, that they truly offer the best services in South Florida. We have someone from Rimkus with us, so you'll find out, including our diamond sponsor, Best Roofing. So,
would it be funny if we just didn't say a word about who this gentleman is? Just sat there and just say not a word until the show is over. They would wonder what the hell we're doing. That would be funny.
So Eric is board certified in community association law, and he has also condominium and plan development law. He has a firm with attorneys in Fort Lauderdale and in Condo. And we're here each week for a little while longer on Sundays.
Yes, exactly.
To take all your calls and emails and questions in the chat box about issues that make life in your condominium or HOA absolutely crazy from one minute to the next. We've been doing this for a very long time.
Things are getting worse, not better, by the way. I can tell you that. People are losing
really?
it. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we'd love to get the phone lines going early, but what I'm going to tell you is that we, unless you got questions for our guests, may not take your call till the half hour. But anyway, no matter where you're on the state, give us a call. 717-GLAZER-8. That's 717-GLAZER-8 with a Z. 717-452-9378. And you can also visit us. Of course, you're on the YouTube channel right now. Talk to us in the chat box.
Absolutely. And don't forget to subscribe to two things. Number one, the Condo Craze channel on YouTube, where you don't just have to watch the show live. All of our shows are in our library. I don't know how many shows we have there by now, Robert. But
on YouTube?
I think it's like well over 100 at this point.
For sure, hundreds.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of hours that people are logging in is incredible, really incredible. Flattering, to say the least. Everybody's going back to our shows to do research.
Yes.
It's wonderful. Thank you for tuning in each week and for tuning in at your convenience. And, of course, the second thing you need to subscribe to is our email list that continues to grow and grow. We're now over 20,000.
Wow.
20,000 on our email list. Pretty amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, by joining our email list each week, you can get announcements about the show, who our guests are going to be, right? And you certainly learn updates about the law, updates about our seminars. We'll talk about that as well. And anything else that we need to tell you of an urgent nature. And by the way, we're all over the place.
Yes, we are. So don't forget that you can also follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Apple, Spotify, and Twitter.
Okay, we do a blog every single Monday morning. Also, for the past 15 years, you can find us at hoa-condoblog.com. Again, hoa-condoblog.com. Tomorrow's topic, the other way, and that's if the developer says it would be an economic. Surprised how many times that happens. And before we get going today, as Karen was alluding to, after 16 years, we are making a big, bold move. We decided to move the show to Thursday nights at 7 o'clock p.m. We're walking away from Sunday mornings after 16 years. And I'll tell you, I'm doing it. Part of the reason why is that I've been hearing for a long time, unfortunately, the people that go to church on Sunday mornings don't get the opportunity to watch the show live and call in with questions.
Right.
And, you know, let's give them a chance after all this time to tune in live with us on Thursday nights. And I think Thursday nights have become like
the new Friday.
The new Friday, right? It's a great night. You'd be home 7 o'clock. It's not too late, right?
You're after dinner, right?
Right after dinner, right? Not too late.
You're not too sauced.
Right. I say right. Exactly. We're competing. We're competing with Wheel of Fortune and beat them.
Of course.
Right? Absolutely, we can beat them.
Largely, the Sunday thing mornings was dictated when we were on the radio.
Exactly.
But now we can,
we can dictate.
be available to more
YouTube's
people.
amazing. We can decide when we're going to do it. Robert, all of this is based on a survey you did, right?
Yeah, we did a survey. There was 408 voted And out of the 408, 237 voted yes, and 171 voted no.
Ooh.
Wow.
Which is a 61% for yes and
61,
38.
So
Okay.
39.
That's it. We got to
no.
do what the crowd wants us to do. I think that's the bottom line. So here's the schedule, and the last show on Sunday is going to be August 25th. It's actually coming up, right? So what's today? August what?
11th.
11th. So 2 weeks from today.
Okay.
2 weeks from today.
We'll be
is
on
going to
Thursday.
No, 2 weeks from
Oh.
today is Sunday.
Okay, our
right?
last show.
So right, and that's going to be our last show on a Sunday, August 25th, and then we skip the following Sunday, and then Thursday night, September 5th. First Thursday in September. It's going to be our inaugural Thursday show.
Wow,
So
that's
it's
huge.
It's going to be a lot of fun. So Robert, you're going to be sending out notice anyway to everybody, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone will get an email reminding them about the change.
Okay, fantastic.
I mean, the show's still going to be available to you on Sunday morning, but you just won't be able to interact live.
Exactly. You can see it whenever you want, but to call in live, it's Thursday night. In fact, Robert brought me an incredible bottle of champagne this week for my birthday, engraved with the Condo
that's right.
Craze
Happy birthday.
emblem.
Oh my God.
Thank you. Engraved with the Condo Craze emblem, and we're going to pop that bottle live on our inaugural show Thursday night, September 5th. So tune in. Okay. Now that the housekeeping's out of the way, by far the most important and confusing topic for the last 2 or 3 years now has been the inspections and repairs that condominiums have to go through. And we are lucky because we have somebody here today from our sponsor, Rimkus, who is going to help make sense out of all these new confusing laws. So let me welcome to the show Iqbal Ahmed from Rimkus. Welcome to the show, Iqbal. Thank you so much for coming today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
We really appreciate it. And before we start asking questions, I really mean this from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank you, and I want to thank Rimkus for being a sponsor of the Condo Craze and HOA show. I mean that. I tell our listeners all the time, this show does not happen. Absolutely. Not only this show, everything else that we do.
Right.
It does not happen without our sponsors, period.
And they're part of your classes?
They participate in every single way. So believe me, thank you from the bottom of my heart to Rimkus, and again to all of our sponsors. No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
But he's really needed these days.
Oh man, is
the
he
Rimkus
needed.
people are really
Absolutely. Okay, so on that note, tell us a little about yourself and your qualifications.
Sure. I am a practice leader with the Construction Science Group at Rimkus Consulting. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of Florida and New York. I have about 15 years of experience in building restoration, construction, and consulting. And as of recent, since the passing of SB 4D, my primary focus has been the structural milestone inspections and the structural integrity reserve studies.
Okay, so we have the man. We have
You're
the
the
man
man.
here.
Have
You're the
you?
guy.
Is your phone ringing off the hook?
It is.
It is. Yeah, I don't doubt that for a second. Just with confusion alone, quite
Yeah,
frankly.
right.
There's just so many questions. All right, so let's start off getting to some specifics. So as we know, condominiums, 3 stories, even smaller in Dade and Broward. There's
Right.
a lot of people in Dade and Broward think, well, wait a minute, I'm not 3 stories. This doesn't affect me. It does. Totally different standards in Dade and Broward. They got to go through phase 1, phase 2 inspections. In Dade and Broward, they call them recertifications. And in Dade and Broward, actually, it's even for electrical too, not just structural. But
Wow.
what are the challenges that you see? We see there's so much confusion as it is because we're here in Broward County. But what are the challenges that you're dealing with, the ones that you're focusing in on when you're at Rimkus? What are the challenges you're being hit with?
As you mentioned, Dade and Broward operate on their own rules and regulations which are more stringent than the Florida statute. The challenges there for those 2 counties specifically is meeting the deadlines, which are shorter than what the statute states. Essentially, they have 90
Really?
days to complete that first report.
Right.
And then timelines are then started or kicked off to when they need to do repairs if they're needed, and then when they need to do a re-report, a reissuance of a final report,
Right.
an all-clean report. From a nationwide statewide standpoint, deadline is also an issue at the moment because the initial deadline is December of this year for all
Yes.
buildings that are 30 years or older.
Want
For
to
phase one?
repeat
For
that.
phase 1, yes.
Want to repeat that. deadline is to do the structural integrity reserve study. The
Yes.
deadline is this year.
And the structural milestone inspection for buildings that are 30
30 years or
Phase
more.
one.
Yes.
Wow.
So how many are actually going to phase 2 from phase 1? All of them?
It depends on the findings in
Yeah.
phase 1.
Right,
Phase
exactly.
1 essentially determines if you need a phase 2 or not.
Let's talk about that, as a matter of fact. So condominiums have to go through this mandatory phase 1 throughout the state. They call it a phase 1. Again, a little different in Dade and Broward. Dade and Broward call them recertifications. Would you agree with that?
Correct.
Yeah, so we don't really use
Interesting.
the phase 1, phase 2 language so much for Dade and Broward. We use them for the rest of the state.
Okay.
Dade and Broward, recertifications, right? Again, this is confusing
I'm
stuff. You know, not many people can even have this talk. You know, it's, and I don't mean this as an insult to members of boards, but a lot of people don't even realize this. Understand, you know, how popular this show is throughout the state.
Yes.
And Dade and Broward has completely different
Right.
language. So it's this, we're talking about confusing
Is that
stuff.
because Surfside fell and
It's because Dade and Broward, and
Rhymy
you can
Dade and
correct me
Broward
if
line.
I'm wrong, the entire state, what we learned after Surfside was that the entire state basically didn't have any qualifications, any requirements for buildings to go and even at any time see a building inspector.
Oh,
at
my
any
goodness.
time during that building's life.
That's really
Think about that.
crazy.
Except for Dade and Broward.
Oh.
Dade and Broward were smart enough to have a recertification process in place, again, that not only for structural, and electrical. The buildings collapse, unfortunately. Florida freaks out, passes a law that says, okay, we're not going to have that happen anymore. Structural inspections for everybody. Would you generally agree?
Generally agree.
Generally agree with what I
The
just said.
Surfside
Okay.
building was going through its 30-year inspection, correct?
I don't know if they were going through it at the time. They were definitely going through an inspection that they
Okay.
went through in 2018.
Okay.
And if they had listened to that inspection in 2018, you know, we wouldn't have had the tragedy that we had, but it was 3 years later and the building still wasn't fixed. But going off topic here for a little bit, let's go back to the phase 1 and phase 2. Tell everybody what the difference is between a phase 1 and a phase 2.
Sure. So a phase 1 inspection is essentially a visual only inspection, specifically visually assessing structural elements of a building. These are your columns, beams, slabs,
Right.
load-bearing walls, foundations, so on and so forth. And what we're looking for here is what the statute calls substantial structural deterioration.
Okay.
Now, within the phase 1 report, if what could happen is a visual inspection is done, no substantial structural deterioration is found, your professional will then prepare a report and send it off to the building official.
I guess what we didn't mention is, when does the buildings have to go through this initial phase 1 inspection?
So at the statute and the subsequent statute state that when the building reaches the age of 30 years, and then there is a slight caveat in which it leaves it up to the building officials to determine if a building needs it at 25 years.
Right.
And it's due to environmental conditions
Like
or
by the
geographic-
water, for example.
Yes.
So those buildings that are by the water that are listening, it's not 30 for you necessarily. It could be
Not
25.
necessarily, yes.
Right.
So the first statute dictated that it is 25 for 3 years within, but they squashed that and they left it up to the building,
building
official
official.
to determine if it's
Gotcha.
going to
Okay.
be 25. So I would wait until you hear, or reach out to your building official and see if you're at 25 or if you're at 30.
And if you are, heads up, because there's an inspection coming to you.
Yes,
No doubt about it.
absolutely.
Okay, so the first one, like you just said, is a visual inspection. And a lot of the condos that are listening today are certainly at that 25 or year mark. You know, realistically though, they go through this phase 1 inspection. Is it possible that after 25 or 30 years that they're not going to require a phase 2?
It's possible, and I've had a few buildings, and in my opinion, it directly correlates to how well the building's maintained. That
right,
speaks,
sure,
yeah, that speaks
sure.
to whether they need a phase 2 or not.
Yeah, I mean, when I taught this new law now, I kind of make it a point that's, if I'm doing the phase 1 inspection and the building hasn't been repaired, you've done, doing the work and doing the phase 1, they know that the building basically hasn't been kept up. You'd have to be crazy to say that the building doesn't require a phase 2. lot of liability on that person.
Yeah.
You know, who if they don't recommend a phase 2. But it's
Absolutely.
possible if you've done your homework and you see that the building's kept up.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we know that if the phase 2 inspection is required, the associations are going to be concerned that the engineer is going to find, you know, a million different things wrong with the condo and potentially bankrupt the owners, right? So how important is it that the company doing the phase 1 can also do the phase 2?
Oh.
Absolutely, and the first part where the association concerns, they're valid. I understand those. Luckily, with the way the statute's written, it hones in on what the scope is.
Okay.
We're not looking at surface imperfections. We're not looking at building code compliance or fire safety code compliance. We're looking for substantial issues, substantial structural issues.
Right.
And as far as the importance of having a professional capable of performing the phase 1 and phase 2, it essentially saves the association time in which if you have a different engineer for phase 1 and phase 2, it makes it a little difficult for the phase 2 engineer to go off the findings of a phase 1.
Of a phase 1.
Yeah.
So the obvious question is, Rimkus can handle the phase 1 and phase 2.
Absolutely, and my recommendations is at the very least, find yourself a professional that can perform both the phase 1 and phase 2, and then to go beyond that is find a turnkey professional firm that can go beyond the milestone requirements and actually prepare plans and specs and do the bidding, do the construction and contract administration. It's that way it's a one-stop shop.
And that's what Rimkus does.
That's in your wheelhouse. I mean,
Yes,
that's what you do,
absolutely.
of course. Let's do this. Let's take our bottom of the hour. Not our bottom of the hour break, our first break of the hour. Sorry. Guys, keep the calls coming in. If you have questions for Mr. Ahmed, now's the time to do it, because we're going to be taking calls for him at the bottom of the hour. So it's 717-GLAZER-8, 717-GLAZER-8, 717-452-9378. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat box as well. We'll take our first break. Be back right after this. Fantastic.
There are very large management companies and there are very small management companies. And I think Affinity sits somewhere in the middle of that, where they are big enough to provide you with all of the back of the house services, the accounting, the infrastructure, the support systems, but small enough to be high touch.
We believe at Affinity that we do the 9 to 5 so that you don't have to do that.
Here on our YouTube channel, Karen Curtis with attorney Eric Glazer. He is board certified in community association law, and we have a very, very special guest from Rimkus. They can do all of your one-stop shopping, Mr. Ahmed, Iqbal, it's Iqbal, yeah.
Correct.
And it's really important because this new law is in effect, and you need to get this done. If you have got like water in your garage that's below the building and spalling and all kinds of stuff, he needs to be called.
Those videos that we see sometimes on Miami Beach where the
Yes.
cars are floating.
Yeah.
Insane. And we're going off topic a little bit, but I was dealing yesterday with this with Robert. There is talk about Governor DeSantis having a special
Yeah.
session to
He said he was-
potentially change the laws that we're talking about. And I'll say this: I wrote a editorial yesterday to every single one of the newspapers that we can get our hands on. Robert was helping me with this yesterday. I couldn't be more against it. You know, I know we're
Oh,
going
you
off
don't wanna
topic a little
change
bit.
it. Okay.
No, I don't want to go back. No, I absolutely do not want to go back. And this might, ruffle some feathers on the air, but there's people complaining.
Yeah, they can't afford it.
Right, they can't afford it, but I will say this, and I'll take some heat for it. For those people out there who are complaining, but you waived your reserves for the last 30, 40, 50 years, I'm sorry, I just don't have the sympathy for you.
But what would they change?
I don't have it. I don't care about your age. Your age has nothing to do with it. You sat there and you waived reserves for 30, 40, 50 years and put the building and every one of its members, including yourself, in jeopardy, safety-wise. So no, I don't want to go backwards, and I don't know how the legislature can possibly go backwards after a 110-0 vote,
Right.
and say, no, we were wrong, we didn't need these safety laws after 98 people died. So we'll get there. I know you have some comments to make on that. What do you think about that, going backwards?
There's going backwards. As an engineer's creed is to use their professional experience and education to betterment, to progress in a society's health, welfare, and
Sure.
safety. So it's hard for me to say that going back is positive. I think the statute was a step in the right direction.
Of course.
And there's always room for fine-tuning the language.
Right, absolutely. I'll say that as an attorney.
Absolutely.
But, I can't imagine, if you go out to a building, some buildings that you've seen in your career, I would think you got to be like, how the hell did they let it get this bad?
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that it's amazing that nobody caught this.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's a catch-all. I mean, you have a lot of associations that do well, that maintain a healthy building, but it is what it is.
So I ended yesterday my letters to the editor by saying, by the way, this is getting overblown. And why is it getting overblown? Because exactly what you're saying, Iqbal, that for those associations that did the right thing, that maintain their building, that put away some money for reserves, these new laws have zero effect
That's right.
on you.
If you've done the right thing.
If you've done the right thing all along, these new laws really don't affect you much at all. The only people that get hurt by these new laws are one that thumb their nose at their responsibility to put away some money for reserves and simultaneously couldn't care less about repairing the property. That's how I see it. As an engineer, any thoughts on that?
Absolutely, I agree, and I think what makes it a little more effective is putting the onus on board members, the responsibility, the legal responsibility in getting these done. And while it is a bit scary on their part, I believe it's something that's necessary to maintain a safe building.
Do we want 98 people perishing again in another collapse?
You cannot
imagine?
fight entropy. I mean, it's just the way life
Absolutely.
is. It's going to decline. You have to fix it.
100%. What did people think when they're waiving reserves for 40 years in a row? Did they not think that repairs are going to be necessary?
It's not like we're in Europe and you're living in a castle made out of stone.
Right, exactly.
It's
exactly.
gonna,
We always say on the show
Yeah.
that you go to Europe and you see, structures that are 1,000 years old and they're still standing. Here,
Yeah.
after 30, 40 years,
Problems,
they're not.
yeah.
There's problems with it. They're made out of stone. Here, they're not.
Absolutely, and with Florida's climate and its
Oh, yeah.
environment, it's detrimental.
rough.
Sure. All right, let's go back to where we were. Every association wants to save money. That's, what we're talking about. But if the association chooses the wrong engineer, that's a problem, I'm assuming. And they allow the repairs to be done on the cheap. Everybody's talking about saving money. But suppose that's what they do and they try making the repairs on the cheap. What can happen? What are the pitfalls?
And who's to blame?
Absolutely, and I have had a couple of these situations where an association, more than one, have reached out and say, hey, listen, we did the phase one. The phase one report says we need to do a phase two, but our professional cannot perform, is not willing to, or is not capable of performing
Really?
phase two.
Okay.
The difficult part here is as an engineer, as a licensed engineer who's going to take responsibility of your building when the milestone is filed, is not necessarily going to go off the opinions on someone else
Sure.
to do the phase two. Unfortunately, an association has to either go close to or back to square one and redo the inspection. That way there's a holistic kind of assessment of the building when this report is submitted.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's very important, as I mentioned earlier, that that associations ask the right questions from their
Cheap.
professionals.
Cheap is expensive.
Cheap, that's absolutely.
You know,
Oh.
we find that we
But-
find that in you know, in every type of profession. Believe me, I've always said that about the legal profession,
That's
quite
right.
frankly.
So
You know,
if you go in and you do phase one and then you recommend phase two, the board can say no
They can. They can.
per the
elect-
new law?
Well, I
they
don't
can
think
say we don't like your phase two. Can
Yeah.
it happen? Yes, I would think anything could happen.
anything can happen.
But let me tell you something. If I'm that board and you get a phase two report, and
Yeah.
you say, this guy's crazy, he's too expensive, and you didn't listen, the potential liability on that board member, on that association, is freaking astronomical. You know, so yes, is there going to be board members that try to save money? Yes, let me tell you something. Something happens, that's on them in their individual capacity.
Oh.
If something happens, they didn't listen to their expert,
Oh.
that is on them in their individual capacity. And by the way, because they didn't listen to their expert, right, potentially no insurance coverage should something happen. right?
Whoa.
Think about that.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so I just want to go, you know, around table. You guys can do the phase one. Rimkus can do the phase one.
Yes,
Rimkus can do the phase two.
correct.
Okay, what about the structural integrity reserve studies
Yes.
that, by the way, are due coming up, right? What's the date for the structural integrity
December
reserve?
31st of this year.
We're here.
Yeah.
August, we're at August 31st, September, October. We're talking about 4 months. Think of this. Think of what we're talking about. In 4 months, every single condominium in the state of Florida that's 3 stories or more has to have their structural integrity reserve study done.
Yeah.
And by the way, you need to report it to the DBPR now when it's done.
Oh
right?
boy.
By my understanding of the new law. Are you busy with requests for structural integrity reserve
Absolutely.
studies? And it's
Absolutely.
got to be nuts.
Absolutely.
Are you guys, I mean, it has to be asked. It has to be asked, even though sponsor, we got to put them on the spot. Are you able to satisfy everybody who needs a structural integrity reserve study? It's got to be insane.
Luckily, we've been doing capital reserve studies for over 25 years.
Okay.
And the Sears, as far as production of these reports, is not different
Really?
at all.
Okay.
Oh, good.
The only difference is certain rules and separation of certain components and
Yes.
mandatory components. But otherwise, the process, the inspection, the report development, it's not that different.
Okay. All right, so you heard it. Here's the man, you know, engineer from Rimkus. They can do it all. Again, use our sponsors. Treat our sponsors well because they treat you well. You gonna stick around and answer some questions?
Absolutely.
All right, who do we got, Rob?
All right, let's go to the calls. Our first caller.
Keep the calls related to this, guys.
Please.
Yeah, our first caller is Helen from Miami.
Good morning, Helen.
Good morning. This is Helen from Miami.
Helen, okay, how can we help you, Helen?
Well, so I live in a condominium that has 7 two-story buildings, but one of them is 3 stories. So we have to abide by different rules, I guess, for that one building. So we have to get the structural study done. But let's say, well, first of all, does the engineer have to look at the other buildings that are only 2 stories
Okay, let's
and assess
stop
them
there.
as well?
Let's stop there, okay? So, Iqbal, here, and we're asked this type of question all the time. And keep in mind, this is Miami, right? Dade County. So, 7 two-story buildings, 1 3-story building, did we say?
1.
Yes.
A 3-story building.
Yeah.
Do people live in that 3-story building? Is it
Yeah.
for residential? Okay. So we have a mixed bag here. How does the association treat that, you know, that condominium, those structures?
Yeah, what
Which
happens?
ones have to go through the certification process or not?
So it would be specifically for the SIRS, or the Structural Integrity Reserve Study, it would be the 3-story building as long as it has more than 4 units. And the reserve study would be created for that, the SEERS would be created for that 3-story building. Now, if an association normally does a capital reserve study, there would be another standalone reserve study for all of the other buildings, all of the other common components, excluding the 3-story.
But do the 2-story building people pay for the 3-story building remediation?
It's all, if it's not a multi-condominium,
Okay.
the answer is
So as everyone
yes.
pays for the taller building?
Yes, that's right. If it's not a multi-condominium, the answer is yes. It's so confusing.
Whoa.
It's really, really
That's like when you
confusing.
need an elevator and you live on the first floor and you're like, I don't want to
I don't
pay
want
for
to pay
that.
for it, right? Exactly. But it's very confusing. It's like, to
we
tell you
have-
the
if
truth,
you-
you need simultaneously, you need engineering and legal answers at the same time.
Absolutely.
So no question about it. Helen, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else we got, Rob?
All right, let's go to our next callers. Hang on, let me drop that one. Joe.
Morning, Joe.
Hello, Eric and Karen. I'm sorry, my question's about HOAs. An HOA reserve study that was conducted in 2024. Then adjustments were made to the expected life, and adjustments were made for the costs, and they found out they have $250,000 in excess in the reserve fund.
Okay.
The question is, how does that money get moved out of the reserve fund, and can it be used for capital improvements with or without the membership approval?
Interesting. So there's $250,000 extra. So the statute, though, still says you can't use reserve funds for other than the purposes for which they were intended. So if you say there's an excess, that's great, but all an excess would mean to me is that, okay, over the next coming years, you just don't have to fund it.
So they don't have
right?
to give it back to the homeowners.
You got to figure out what you're going to do with it by a vote of the unit owners.
Okay.
Only a vote of the unit owners can determine what to do with
And
it.
they can say we want it back?
Yes, they can. If the reserve fund is overfunded, yeah, I think they can. But again, reserve money, the board shouldn't be just dealing with it willy-nilly. Take a vote of the owners when you're using it for purposes other than which they were originally intended.
Yeah.
Okay? On that note, let's do this. Let's take our bottom of the hour break, and when we get back, we'll have more calls for Iqbal. Okay? Back right after this.
Rimkus Consultants offer the professional expertise to help condominium and cooperative communities provide safe, compliant buildings for their tenants. We have more than 170 Florida licensed engineers and architects who are experienced with local regulations and can assist with Senate Bill 4D compliance. We can help with milestone structural inspections, capital expenditure evaluations, structural integrity reserve studies, and developer transition reports. Focusing on energy, resilience, maintainability, and sustainability, our experts can help with every phase of the building life cycle. For mitigation after a catastrophic event, building restoration, repair and remediation consulting, or Senate Bill 4D inspections, please visit rimkus.com.
All over the world, people have plumbing problems. These problems can be expensive and destructive to fix. Have you ever wondered if there was a way to take care of your plumbing problems without destruction and an outrageous price tag? Welcome to Pipelining Technologies, Inc., where we specialize in fixing your problems without demolition and minimum cutting by means of pipelining. Pipelining is the ability to take a pipe damaged by root intrusion or long-term deterioration and make it new. By means of inserting an epoxy-saturated liner into the pipe and allowing it to harden or cure, leaving behind a brand new pipe.
That sounds great. How can I get pipelining in my home, commercial building, or condominium?
Simply fill out our online contact form and a pipelining representative will get in touch with you in a timely fashion, or call us directly at 561-853-5463.
Welcome back to Condo Craze and HOAs. It's our second half hour here on our YouTube channel. You can give us a call, and if you have a question about the coming Sears and not the store Sears, but your structural integrity, give us a call, 717-GLAZER-8. That's 717-452-9378. We've got Iqbal. He's with Rimkus, and Rimkus, you just saw their ad. They will be there for you to do your phase 1, your phase 2, and any kind of planning
Reserve
that you
studies,
need.
fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, interesting question. Eric Solenston writes in, and he says, we just completed our 40-year recertification. We also completed our reserve study. Sounds like this condo's on the ball, right? And he answers, what else, Rimkus? And I'm saying to myself, well, what about routine maintenance? I guess that's what the question is asking. How important is routine maintenance? In other words, you don't just finish this and do nothing for the next 10 years. I guess that's what this gentleman's asking.
Absolutely, and typically the Sears will recommend at what cycle certain aspects of a building need replacement. There's certain components of a building, like painting, that just need to be done in their entirety. And you'll see the new components like plumbing and electrical system. While they may not need repairs, they certainly need some sort of inspection, some sort of maintenance program.
Sure.
So when you find problems, do you kind of like make the worst ones come, repaired first, or is it all, you have to do everything at once, or can you like time it out?
So specifically as it pertains to the milestone inspections, the structural items that require an engineer to prepare the plan, sign, and seal, there is a timeline after the phase 2. I believe it's 365 days for all the counties except Dade and Broward.
Gotcha.
That they have to start the repairs. Not complete the repairs, but start the repairs.
I'm no engineer, obviously, but I can tell you just in my practice over 30 years, to me, what is the detrimental problem for buildings is water entry. Water is the killer. So how important is it to have, a waterproofing check in place of some kind, or when you see any possible entry of water from anywhere, you can't sit on that.
Absolutely.
That's just what I see, as an attorney. It's always boils down to water. Should there be some sort of check for it? Roof maintenance? Tell me, what should condos be doing? I guess that's the question in the 10-year interim.
Absolutely. Specifically for the condition is to call out to take a water intrusion issue seriously.
Yeah.
I know when we do prepare these milestones, and while they are limited to substantial structural deterioration, we offer a side note of saying, hey, listen, you should probably get your stucco cracks fixed. You have some waterproofing peeling going on. These are not substantial, but we recommend getting them fixed so they don't lead to substantial.
So does it become substantial?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And when you start to see minor spalling even in balconies, how important is it to jump on minor spalling from balconies, kind of immediately?
Balconies are a big issue in the state of Florida as far as their condition. It is very important to jump on that very early because they could lead to structural distress, structural
rebar.
damage. Yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
tell you want to talk about an expensive job when it's time to do the balconies. That's a real expensive job. As a matter of fact, I know in some circumstances, you tell me, some construction companies, some general contractors say, you know what, it doesn't even pay to repair the defects in the balconies. How about just putting on a completely new balcony? What do you find in that area?
So it generally goes back to maintenance. If proper maintenance is not done, that's essentially what's needed. A complete drop of the balcony. And
taken out completely.
Taken out completely, especially balconies that are only supported on one side, so they're cantilevered out. So there's constant stress on the rebar between the building and we've had some horror stories.
Do you recommend that they put in the hurricane glass and not have the hurricane shutters bolted into the wall if they're going to replace the balconies?
Because we're always worried about making more holes in the building.
The holes in the building make it worse, right?
Absolutely.
So why not go ahead while you're doing it and put the hurricane glass in? Understood.
And that's a good point. We find that part of the maintenance issues we find is the screen, lanais, and everything they use. They might not use the right screws, and essentially creates an opening in the slab. 5,
Water
10,
intrusion,
15
yeah.
years, you start seeing spalls.
Explain what happens when it's time to actually work on the balconies or remove a balcony. Obviously, you better not open the door and step out onto a balcony that's no longer there. What does the building official come in, seal off your door or anything like that?
Absolutely. I think if necessary, the unit may need to be evacuated. Otherwise, you block away the sliding glass door
Okay.
to prevent access.
So these are things, what we're talking about today that are just so important.
Yeah.
I mean, but you're going to live with a condition that your balcony is sealed off,
Right.
If you just don't take care of things early on. It's going to affect the sale of your unit. It's going to affect the value of your unit. So, and it's so important to go through routine maintenance. That's why I'm very much in favor of all these new laws. And the way I ended the comment yesterday was, look, is it going to be tough for the next few years? Yeah, it might be. But after all this is said and done and we go through this tough period, Florida's going to be able to say to the rest of the nation, we have the most safest condominiums in the entire country, right? And not only are they in great shape structurally, they're in great shape financially. I think it's such a win-win for the state of Florida to go through this.
Has anyone printed your editorial?
We just started sending it out yesterday.
Okay.
So we're going to know this week.
I'm going to look for it.
Yeah, look for it. We'll put it on our blog, as a matter of fact. Okay, who else we got?
All right, our next caller is Anthony.
How are you, Anthony?
Hey, how you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning. I'll actually stick to this topic instead of asking some of my other questions.
Sure.
But one of the questions I have is that I'm in the Palm Beach area, is that when they started out last year, they did not come up to an agreement in the condo I'm in, because they are having to do concrete restoration. They're also having to tear down a area where the pool is. But instead of coming up to an agreement on what they're going to put back, they used the emergency rule saying that it was a danger, which the condos that I'm in, they've actually been using for the last couple of years. And my concern is that they're supposed to have an agreement, I believe, on what's going to go back before they start tearing everything down. And it's something that's actually been an issue and a question here, because now, we feel that they're going to.
I'm not sure your question, but I got to get to the point. What's the question? What's the question?
Oh, the question is can they go in and start tearing everything down without knowing what's going to go there afterwards? In something that they had planned a year ago.
Tearing what down? But when you say tearing down, what were they tearing down?
They're tearing down, so there's a pool area that's over the garage.
Right.
And they're tearing down that entire pool area in the garage that they had planned for a year ago. And instead of getting an agreement with the association on what's going to go there, they use the emergency rules with what we're having now, saying that it's a danger when they planned this a year ago.
So
the
pool
question
deck,
is
okay. So hold up. So I guess the question is, we have a dangerous pool deck, right? Which is what happened exactly what happened at Surfside, right? So you're saying the board decided, okay, let's rip it out right now, but they made no plans whatsoever as to what they're putting back, okay?
Correct. They basically showed what's going to put back because they're trying to get artificial turf in this area.
Okay.
But people were against it, so they just used the emergency rule. But they had planned to tear this down a year ago, so I don't know how it's an emergency after a year.
So hold on, let's turn it off. So can building official come in and basically say, look, this is about to collapse, tear it down? I think the answer would be?
I think any type of structural demolition needs to have engineering oversight.
Of course.
You don't want to start ripping away at things that could potentially cause a chain reaction.
I mean, if you go in and you say this needs to go away, you're going to give them an engineering, architectural plan and what you're going to do.
Yeah, you can't just set dynamite off to the thing and just blow it up. Of course. So we'd say this board, without having engineering plans in place, need to slow down. Pretty obvious.
Especially if it's structurally connected to the rest of the structure.
Exactly.
Building,
the parking lot.
So by taking down the pool deck, you might be risking the collapse of the structure. Exactly. Rob, who else we got?
All right, our next caller is Allison from Port St. Lucie.
Oh.
Hey, Allison.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I live in a single-family home and townhouse mixed association. We don't have Kaufman language, but what we do have is a paragraph in our bylaws that says, in the event of any conflict, any applicable Florida statute, the neighborhood declaration, the articles, these bylaws, and the rules and regs of the neighborhood association shall govern in that order.
Okay.
So it said the Florida statute first, in that order. What does that mean?
Well, again, this is off topic for today, but the way I interpret those documents is if there's not a clear intent to adopt the new statutes as they get passed each and every year, and your documents can be interpreted to say the Florida statutes when your community was created. So there's no Kaufman language. You're stuck with the laws that existed when your HOA was created under this attorney's interpretation. Okay, the new laws that come out, if they change the contract in a substantive matter, then the laws that applied at the time your HOA was created, those are the ones that apply. Next call,
But
Rob.
most HOAs don't have Kaufman.
That's correct, they don't. Who else we got? I want to stick to Iqbal. We want to talk specifically about the questions that he can answer. Keep him on the hot seat. I'm always on the hot seat. I need a break.
Let's see, we have Joe from, I think it's Palm Beach, and he has a question with reserve funds.
Oh, good.
How are you, Joe?
Good morning, Eric. I was on the board in the building where we did go through the 40-year restoration. We hired an engineer, and when they started to find some defects in the concrete, he said that they had to drill into at least 10% of the catwalks. This was on a 4-story building. So I'm just wondering, was that appropriate for that?
Okay.
And also, I have the secondary question.
Wait, let's slow it
funds,
down.
if
Hold
I
on.
could get that in.
Wait, hold on. Your first one is a very interesting one, okay? So sometimes an engineer will come all around, take a look at a building, and say, it looks like this line may have a problem specifically, or it looks like the whole building may have a problem. The only way we may know for sure is to kind of do a sample, right? Tell us about that.
So the statute relating to the milestone specifically, it speaks on this. The idea here is the engineer should take necessary precautions to limit the amount of areas that need destructive testing. However, also you need enough to formulate your opinion confidently. Yeah. So there is certain language that we're not going to take out a big chunk in your the most visually aesthetic place of your building. We're limited to a sample. Of course, it has to be enough to formulate our
So
opinions.
it might be very reasonable to say, listen, we need to go into 10% of the units and do some destructive testing. Not a problem.
Yeah.
Common.
Common, yeah.
Okay, common. Your next question, real quick.
Yeah. There's always a question about the reserve funds. And I'm thinking that we all know that maintenance times the amount of owners, that's what the budget for the year is. Is there a percentage that the reserve fund is called fully funded? Is there
everybody
a technical percentage?
So everybody asks that question all the time. What percentage of the budget needs to go for reserves? It does not work like that.
No.
It does not work like that. You know how the reserve study works. I guess you can explain it better than I can.
Well, specifically as it relates to the statute and the structural integrity reserve study, It's fixated upon 8 components, 7 of which being like your roof, exterior painting, plumbing, electrical, so on and so forth, and the 8th item being a catch-all, meaning anything else that affects those 7 items. So your reserve study has to be created in detail, estimating repairs, replacements of each of these components and subcomponents, and that's how you come up with a
Separate of the
contribution.
budget.
It's separate of the budget.
Completely separate.
But also, we take a look at the roof. If your roof was just put on, your roof has a 20-year life expectancy now, let's say, right? So if it's going to cost $1 million, so we're putting away $50,000 a year for the next 20 years. So it's not a percentage of your budget.
No.
It's a study that needs to be formed per component, and it's based upon how much life expectancy each component has and how much it's going to cost to replace.
And you
it
can
has
probably-
nothing to do with a percentage of your budget. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, let's do this. We're running real late. Final break of the hour. We'll be back right after this.
In South Florida, the transition from bright sunshine to heavy rain and hurricanes can take a toll on your property's exterior and structural integrity. Cracked stucco, spalled concrete, they're more than eyesores. They can signal deeper issues. Now, with new Florida laws involving structural integrity requirements, we want to help you meet your milestone inspections and maintain the durability and beauty of your building. Since 2004, PD has been the trusted expert in structural concrete restoration, painting, and waterproofing for condominiums and commercial properties. We address the core of the problem, restoring your concrete's strength and stability to give your property a fresh, attractive appearance for many years to come. Visit pdpaintinginc.com or call us today, 888-416-3204, or scan the QR code to save our contact information.
We are DMI Paving and Seal Coating, Florida's parking lot experts. We specialize in asphalt paving and repair, including pothole repair, seal coating using JC7 or polytar, concrete curbs, ramps, and walkways, and striping and pavement marking, as well as ADA compliance. We service commercial properties, including homeowners associations, apartment communities, shopping malls, warehouses, stadiums and arenas, and more. Experience is worth more than anything in an industry like ours, and our staff has decades of it. We have specialized equipment for any job, regardless of size, saving you time and money. DMI has a reputable history. We have been in business since 1956. We serve the state of Florida from 6 locations. Let us bid on your next parking lot project. Visit us online at dmipavingandsealcoating.com.
And HOAs, and we are so thankful that we have our guest here from Rimkus, Iqbal Ahmed, and
Engineer.
you've been just amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you so much.
It's
for
been a
your
pleasure.
knowledge today, believe me.
Amazing, answering so many questions.
Matter of fact, let's take 1 or 2 more, and before we call it a day, who else we got?
Let's go to John. Hang on here.
Yes, good morning, Karen. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning. How can we help? Good morning. How can we help? He said my name twice, so I figured I'd answer back.
On today's topic, I have a condo unit in a 2-story building. I understand it's 3 stories and higher. However, the building is within 3 miles of the shoreline, and doesn't square footage play into this?
You're in
Even though it's
Broward,
2
right?
stories,
You're in Broward.
yeah, Hollywood. Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. So I know that square footage does play into it, and I don't remember the specific. I'm going to give you roughly from what I remember, and I know I have it in my seminar. Roughly, from what I understand, if in Broward, if the building is 3,000 square feet, you're going through your recertifications. In Dade, I think it's even as low as 1,500 or 2,000 square feet. So that's the way I see it. So in other words, tell me you can have a bunch of 1-story condominium buildings connected, and they're going through their recertification,
For
right?
Broward and Dade. And John, did you get your notification from Broward County yet?
Not that I'm aware of, but the board there isn't real good about providing information. I'm going to delve into all this next week.
Okay.
I know we had our 40, before this law was passed, we had our 40-year required inspection, or whatever you called it, probably 15 or 20 years ago.
Okay.
But that was before the...
So for Broward and Miami, they have a website, a resource online. For Broward County, they have PDFs that list all the properties that need recertification in the next year.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
You can link to that.
It's not that great to. I don't have it on me, but it's called Building Safety Inspection Program, and you have to, if you Google it, Broward County Building Safety Inspection Program. It's not that user friendly. It's a PDF with a list. You have to kind of locate your address. But on Miami's website, Miami-Dade's website, they actually have a searchable database.
Oh, really?
Gives you information.
Great to know.
That's huge.
Okay, so if you're, like, again, just to repeat, if you're not sure if you're going to need your website both in Broward, a website for Dade, you can go online, do a search, and if you see your name there, you
But
just rolled
should
a
you
7.
be notified?
I believe they'll send out notifications, but
Right.
here's the thing about Broward and Miami. They give you 90 days.
Oof.
I'm not too certain about Miami-Dade, but I know Broward County 90 days from the notice to get that
Oh,
report in.
so you
It's
better
a very
figure it
short
out now.
time. So
Oh, yeah.
the recommendation here is associations do their research and get ahead of the curve.
And
that way
book
they have,
you because you're going to be busy.
Yeah, they're going to be, I mean, you know, don't wait until December 28th, I guess, to call you.
The fees are going to go up if you wait till the last day. What's going to happen is you're going to get charged a lot more because you're an emergency.
Supply and demand,
Supply and
right?
demand, yeah.
Absolutely. John, thank you so much for the call. You're always a fantastic fan of the show.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
Great info, guys. Great info as always. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hey, let's go to our last call of the day. Who do we got?
Our last call, I'm going to pronounce it Amelia. You tell me?
Good morning,
Yeah.
Amelia.
Oh, I think she's no longer here.
Okay.
Oh, we have no more callers.
Okay, we're done. So let's do this. How about we tell everybody how they can get in touch with Rimkus?
Let's do it.
So how do we get in touch with you?
Primarily rimkus.com, RIMKUS.com. You can visit the website. You can click Find an Expert, look me up. My direct number and email address are there as well. Otherwise, you can contact us through 1-800-580-3228.
Okay, hey, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
You're
It
a
was a pleasure.
fantastic, wonderful guest for today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
He said he
You
was
really-
nervous. I couldn't tell that at all.
Nervous? No.
I had a
it
lot
was
of fun.
I'm
It was
glad.
fun,
That's
right?
great. And you know what? We always say we have fun on
Yeah.
Sunday too.
Yeah.
It's never a day of work for us.
No,
it's always
never.
a lot of fun.
Never.
So I want to thank Rimkus again for being a
Appreciate you guys.
sponsor, and I so appreciate you coming here today.
Thank
And
you.
believe me, they at home appreciate
Thank
it. I
you.
can tell you that. And if you need legal help off the air, you can give Glazer and Sachs a phone call, 954-983-1112. Again, 954-983-1112. And I just want to remind everybody again, 2 weeks from today is our last Sunday show. After that, we switch to Thursday nights starting September 5.
To be live, but you'll always have the show.
Exactly. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much again for tuning in
Thank you.
to Condo Craze and HOAs. And yes, we will see you and speak to you again next Sunday at 11 a.m. Thank you so much again, Iqbal, for coming today, and Rimkus for coming today. Guys, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Eric.